Hey, everyone. I am so excited to be here today because we have a very special guest who I will have introduce themselves in just a moment. But before we jump in, I will just take a moment to those who may not know me, introduce myself. I am Cassandra Quinn, and I am on the volunteer leadership team for the Chicago chapter of Conscious Capitalism. And we have a very important event coming up later this week. It is the Chicago premiere of the award-winning, there we go, film Beyond Zero. And we have somebody who is uniquely connected to the film as well as to helping this event happen here in Chicago. So I'm going to pass it to Erin and let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Cassandra. Super excited to be here talking all things Beyond Zero. My name is Erin Meezan. I am the Chief Sustainability Officer at JLL, which stands for Jones Lang LaSalle. We are a global real estate services and advisory firm. And I'm connected to the movie because in my former role as CSO at Interface, which is the company the movie is about, I was a part of the transformation of a company.
I love it. And you also were a pretty important figure throughout the process of filming Beyond Zero. Is that accurate?
I think Nathan is like, you're a key character, whatever that means. But my link to Interface is I was there almost 20 years working in sustainability. I was their chief sustainability officer for close to a decade. And there's a really important point in the movie that covers a really pivotal time for our company, which was the passing of our founder who had really established sustainability at Interface. And now the kind of new CEO coming into the business, taking the helm. And my role was really to help lead this new CEO on the journey to not just understand who Interface was, but really convince him to raise our level of ambition and to go, like the title of the film talks about, beyond our original sustainability focus to Beyond Zero, to something even more ambitious. And so the back half of the how did we really embrace that next step in Interface's journey?
I love it. Well, one of the exciting parts of this Chicago premiere is that we are having this a screening event that is also the launch of the Beyond Zero Conscious Business Curriculum here in Illinois, which is really exciting. But that event is happening on February 29th. So that is this Thursday. It is happening at the Caron Center. And for those who are interested in more details about the event itself, you can check out, I'm going to drop it in the chat, and that way you can be able to grab up that link. There might be some platforms I need to go do that separately in a moment, but no matter where you are catching this, whether you're catching it live or a replay, you'll be able to find out more information about joining us for that event. But because the central part of this launch for us is being able to enjoy this screening, we are also just going to show just a little snippet of the film right now that also gets to feature our special guest today. So let me get that all squared away for us.
Enjoy the sneak peek, everyone. It's a little sneak peek of what's to come.
Just a little bit. Let's see. Ooh, it went out of full screen. There we go. Thanks, everyone, for bearing with us. Here we go.
By civilization's definition,
Nope, that is not the one we wanted. The fun of being live. Let's try again. Sorry, everyone. Wow. We tested this right before we went live to make sure we didn't have this.
Here's one thing I will say while you're pulling that up, Cassandra.
Thank you.
I would encourage everybody, if you can, to go see this film in a theater. You certainly can find a way to access it after, but for those of us who kind of do sustainability for a living, we are always absorbing tons of information that's very technical. And what I love about Beyond Zero is it's a very human side to the story of working in sustainability and all of the ups and downs and kind of the trials and triumphs. So it's really nice to see that in a community of other people who do it for a living and get to hear from the director and filmmaker Nathan Havey after. So I would say, please, please, please try to go see it together. I think you'll really enjoy the experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that we are ready to rock and roll now. Here we go. Wonderful. And as we are transitioning back, I know that obviously part of your unique story is that you were part of Interface during all of this transition for the company, this huge milestone that it hit, as well as being able to go through the process of the filmmaking. But now you're with JLL. And so what should we know about JLL and all the work that you're doing there?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So JLL stands for Jones Lang LaSalle. And as I said, we're a global real estate services and advisory firm. And, you know, as the chief sustainability officer there, I kind of have two roles. The first is to help our firm deliver on the really ambitious commitments we're making across of sustainability, whether that's DEI, whether that's health and safety, whether that's climate action. And then I have a really interesting second part to the role, which is sometimes I am pulled into and engage with some of our larger clients on helping them solve and learning from them about how they're solving their own sustainability trials and challenges. So it's really fantastic. I've been here about 1.5 years. And I really was motivated to come here because, like Interface, JLL had some pretty big ambitions around climate. And I've really been enjoying the last 1.5 years.
Oh, that's amazing. And I love that you have the opportunity to be doing all of that impactful work inside of the company that you're in now, but also being able to help let that ripple out to your clients. That is super cool that you get to be involved in those projects as well. I'm curious, so just to help connect dots for our audience, what about being an impact partner of this Chicago premiere of Beyond Zero? What does that mean for JLL's commitment to sustainability and generally to conscious business practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we at JLL have made some really ambitious commitments on climate. Let's just choose climate. But we also serve loads of large clients, whether they're banks, tech, real estate investors who have made similar sort of ambitious commitments. And we know that it's going to take a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, and a lot of people working with our firm and within their organizations to deliver that. So it's really important that we're constantly supporting tools, dialogue, stories, learning that kind of show people the way and that help develop the skills and capabilities of people in our organization and in our clients' organizations to deliver these things. I've been in this movement 20 plus years. When I first got here, there were not college level degree programs and advanced learning and green MBAs. So a lot of people that are in organizations now working to deliver this are not.
Oh, I'm not sure if Erin is frozen for all of our audience. Oh, there she goes. Could you repeat? Because I think I may have missed a bit of what you said.
So I think, picking back up where I was, this idea of it's appealing to support the film, the continued dialogue, because as an organization that has commitments and works with loads of clients who have them, supporting the tools, the stories, and anything that will help us train people, engage people about what it means to deliver on sustainability, super important to us, because that's what we need. We need everyone in the organization, whether it's JLL or our clients, able to help us deliver on the ambitious goals we've set.
Absolutely. And as we are looking to how this is getting rolled out with the new curriculum here in Illinois, how does that align with the mission and values specifically here in the state of Illinois?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting opportunity, I think, for us to support more dialogues and bringing others together within Illinois to really think about how do we collectively move together faster. So many of our organizations have set ambitious goals. I think also the city of Chicago and other cities across the state have their own ambitious goals that would require and would really benefit from collaboration. So when we can bring people together in dialogue about what they're doing, what they're learning, how we can accelerate, I think that can really help us all move kind of further faster.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the beautiful things in the conversation that I had with Nathan when we did our interview with him last week was really looking at that education and conversation accelerant in kind of a multitude of ways. One is through this curriculum that is being rolled out to allow for there to be this formal education, especially at the college level right now. And what people may not realize if they're new to Beyond Zero and the specific curriculum is that we're actually partnering, the Conscious Capitalism Chicago Chapter is partnering with Nathan to be able to offer this as no cost to the educators or the institutions themselves. And that's what's so special and important about our impact partners like JLL, and the fact that that is what's making it possible for us to do that. The financial resources and the other, in kind and support, whether that is volunteering or getting the word out, all of us collectively working together, like you said, is what really is giving it that momentum to be able to also provide that accessibility to the curriculum. But then also from the education on the business side, that is really what he's working on with the workshop piece, which I know that we discussed a little bit privately on Friday about that piloting that he's doing of the workshop that we're going to be doing a part 2 in a couple months. Details to come around that. But I think that you and JLL got to do a bit of piloting in-house around some of that and doing a screening as well as some workshopping. Can you talk to us a little bit about how this has directly impacted the work that you're doing internally? Does that make sense?
And I mean, I'll start just by saying I'm excited about the curriculum because examples really help. Yeah. And Interface may be the most famous, but least well-known example of corporate transformation from not at all thinking about sustainability, wasteful manufacturing practices, to one that now operates in a very efficient way with innovative products, with really engaged employees, and with customers who are loyal because of that commitment to sustainability. So those examples really help. It also really helps to bring those examples of how we delivered that to other organizations that are earlier in their journey, that are in the middle of their journey, that are, trying to shorten their learning curve on something in particular. So the workshops are super helpful. We did show it internally to give our internal teams where, JLL is not as long on or as mature on their sustainability journey as Interface is. So we showed it to our internal teams as an example of what's possible when everyone gets behind a really ambitious vision. and what we could potentially deliver. And we use it as a platform to have a conversation with our employees about where are we now? Let's do a self-assessment. If we wanted to be closer to interface, what do we think some of the biggest barriers are? And what could we leverage to get there? So I think even using it at a really foundational level as a kind of a mirror and asking, where is your organization on that journey? It provokes a really kind of interesting example. And there are funny moments in it. There are sad moments in it. There are really inspirational moments in it. And that was kind of not lost on our JLL team, who could kind of point to really similar parallels in our journey.
Yeah.
So we had a great time. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that like being able to get everybody aligned with that vision and speaking the same language, as well as just being able to, you can't be it until you see it a lot of times, right? And so being able to have those examples of people who further along to say, oh, wow, that's how it's possible. That's how it's done. Because I think a lot of times there's a misconception that if you don't start out from inception with this kind of mindset or this kind of initiative or goals, that it's going to be impossible for you to do it later. But clearly that's not the case, because Interface has given us a great example. JLL is on that journey. So what do you, like, you already started to get into it with the way that you just shared in that last question, but why should people really care about the documentary, and how does JLL like desire for people to engage? I know it sounds like it's not just about feeling good and getting inspired, but really using it as a catalyst. But I'm curious to hear some more specificity around that.
Well, because I was at Interface for almost 20 years, I mean, we used to get some really skeptical business leaders that would sort of say, like, maybe their sustainability team had brought me in to talk to them, and they would sort of say, like, what can we learn from like this little carpet company? And it was, the lessons I think really are universal in terms of how you set ambitious goals, how you get employees behind that. What are the necessary things that come together to create innovation? How might your customers respond to that? How do you think investors are going to respond? I mean, there are some universal lessons. Because it comes from a carpet company, to me, is almost irrelevant. I mean, it was a publicly traded US-based manufacturer, and there's loads of parallel in every other organization that I've talked to, whether it's a large retailer, whether it's a private company or a for-profit, it doesn't matter what you do. So how we've used it and how I think it's really useful is very much to show employees what it could look like, the ups and downs of what we're about to embark on. So I think it's really useful to give them an example. I also think it's really useful to provoke dialogue, like I just said, show it and have a conversation about where your employees think your organization is on that spectrum. Are they early? Are they in the middle? Are you mature? But it's also good to sort of say to people, is this the journey you want to go on? We're giving you a sort of sense of what it's going to take to get there. And the part that I really love is it comes through in the film that Interface was not kind of a bastion of, crazed environmentalists. A lot of the movie is based on what happened at the flagship US headquarters, which is in the state of Georgia in the southeastern United States. Nobody there was a crazy environmentalist before we brought some of the ideas of wasting less, using renewable energy. And so I think it really talks to how people can change on this journey and how it gives everyone in your organization an opportunity to connect to something greater than just what you do. So I had employees tell me for many years at Interface, we may have started at a company that made carpet, but by the end of it, they felt like they were contributing to something much larger.
And that is so important for so many reasons. Like, obviously the ripple effect into the community and the difference in the impact, but also like just in terms of business success, it makes business sense to be doing these kinds of things and making these kinds of choices because it impacts how people decide to spend their money. So how are we engaging our consumers? But then also internally, people statistically desire, like at much higher rates, to be at places that they feel like they are contributing to a bigger purpose and really have important values, not just I'm going to go punch a time card and put my time in and go home, right? And so it's really about the business sense of how are we be able to be successfully internally as well. So I think that it speaks to both of those things. And I love, again, it's a great example of, this, I may have started off working at a carpet company, but now I'm a part of this global movement, right? And I'm curious, the question floated away. I was holding on to it. You said something that inspired a question.
I would say on that last point, especially now, I mean, I think the people who are entering the workforce now are very overt and open about saying, I will make a choice of employers based on how aligned I feel they are to my personal values, or whether or not I feel like they have a good purpose or a good mission. And so I think the case for that is only increasing, right? So it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And people are screening employers, top talent are screening employers by saying, I don't want to be at a place that doesn't have that. Exactly. So I think it's a massive opportunity for companies to be more open about embracing that and saying, we want to evolve for this organization, whatever it is, to not just be a coffee company or a carpet maker or someone who provides online learning, but that is the vehicle for doing something greater, changing consciousness, impacting a global supply chain for more sustainable agriculture, making products and interfaces case that store more carbon than they emit, and trying to directly influence kind of what's happening in the built environment on climate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that spurred back the question or idea that I had thought of earlier that had floated away is the idea that really what we're talking about, this shift in consciousness and the way that we are engaging with business practices, it's not about bolting on, we're going to do some kind of green initiative, or we're going to have this side project where we might be doing some good in the world. It is being built into the DNA of our companies and really creating this core nature or purpose behind the organization and what they're doing. And it sounds like that was a big part of the shift for Interface. And also it sounds like that is the journey that JLL is on as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I think was great about, Interface is from the outset, they realized this isn't going to be like a green department or, like a small initiative. Like maybe because the founder, Ray Anderson, was an engineer, maybe because he understood systems, but he instantly knew it was transformational. And I think a lot of organizations dipped their toes in this and did it badly, and are now to the place where they're realizing, like, we can't just do that. And what I love about JLL is they kind of bypassed a lot of that and said, actually, for us, it's really about the purpose. The purpose that we have at the company is to shape the future of real estate for a better world. And so they feel very comfortable setting wildly ambitious goals, which is something they kind of share with Interface, right? So we've set a net zero target to be, to essentially reduce our absolute emissions 95% by 2040, which means to get there, we've got to be at least halfway there, about 51% reduction in our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 2030. So they've signed up at JLL for an incredibly ambitious target. The bulk of which has to do with really influencing our clients to accelerate their journeys. So I think it's doubly ambitious in that regard. It's super ambitious to sign up for something yourself. It's really ambitious to sign up for something knowing that you're a services and advisory firm where you don't even control the bulk of what you've got to reduce. And so I think that's the critical challenge that we love. But I love that we're ambitious enough to sign up for it at JLL, and we're ambitious enough to say it publicly. And we were the first. And I think just like Interface was the first, what's really great about that is you eventually get to see the catalytic impact of that, because the first time someone in our industry does it, sets a net zero target like JLL, others start to follow. And you start to see like a push in the industry, right? Because if you could hire someone us, CBRE, someone else, you're going to go to the person who's aligned with your values if you've set a climate goal. So it does start to have a ripple effect, which I think is another one of the great themes in the movie, right? I mean, here was a 5,000 person company that I would argue has not just influenced the industry, meaning the other carpet makers, they have influenced the built environment industry in very dramatic ways.
Absolutely. It is part of that shift where we're building momentum to critical mass, where it becomes hopefully the norm rather than the exception, where everyone goes, oh, it's weird to not do this, right? And so I think that I'm curious, is there anything that you would want to share that you love about the work that you do, or that you wish that people would ask, but that doesn't get asked much, that you'd love to share with our audiences?
Oh, I mean, that's a really good question. I think that question to me ties back a little bit to Beyond Zero, because I wish sometimes people would say to me, like, tell us a story about the level of personal satisfaction that you've gotten, out of being on this journey. Usually I get asked, like, tell us the examples, tell us the technical stuff, or tell us how to like have a career in sustainability, right? Which is fine. I mean, everyone wants to do it. And of course there's this assumption that there's like a super like well thought out path, when really for most of us, it's just like you kind of followed, something that seemed really interesting to you and you got into it. So sometimes I wish people would say to me, like, tell us the stories of like those moments when you just felt so grateful to do this work. Like, I spent almost 20 years there, I said, and as part of that, I interacted with a lot of our employees around the world in all of our manufacturing plants, whether that was Asia, Europe, or the US. And there were many moments in my career when people said to me with tears in their eyes, I'm incredibly privileged to work here because we do so much more than make carpet. And I'm proud to tell my kids about that. I'm proud to go to their school and talk about what we do. I'm proud to stand up at a business conference and talk about what we've done to transform our products because it's made a real impact. And honestly, like, isn't that what we all get out of bed for? So I wish we kind of talked about the softer, more emotional, more personally impactful side of the satisfaction associated with having a career like this.
Yeah.
Instead of the 99% of the time we talk about like, here's how we did it. Here's the, unlocking the potential of your supply chain. Here's your greenhouse gas inventory, wah, wah. We kind of have to inject a little more of that, like, oh my gosh, what an amazing way to spend your life conversation.
The humanity behind it. I think that so often, especially at these larger and global companies, but I think just in general, we can get really caught up in this kind of world, in the macro of what is the big picture, what is the big ripple effect, and lose sight of, like you said, the humanity, the stories behind it, and the micro, and recognizing. And I think that there's a missed opportunity there too, because when we only focus on the macro, and we're not looking at those individual stories and impact, we're missing out on another level of ripple effect. Because when we have each of those stories of impact, and the ways that you're saying, I'm proud to stand up at a conference, I'm excited to tell my kids what I do, like that level of individual impact has a giant ripple, and I would say in a lot of ways can have even more impact on that collective conscious shift than even some of the macro level things that we talk about.
Oh, totally, because it fans out in ways that we can't even measure. So I did this project right after our founder, Ray Anderson, died, and our CEO was really concerned about losing who we were and kind of our identity. And I was like, listen, it is embedded, it is deep in this company, and I don't know how to prove that to you. But we got this idea to take a documentary film crew, this is way before Mission Zero, to our factories around the world and just talk to our employees about, when did you get it? Why is it important to you? And that's when I say, like, every day in every factory, with every like session, someone cried And I had to, like, the first couple of times it happened, I was like, whoa, I don't know how to deal with this. Like, some people didn't want to cry on camera. Some people like needed a minute. But that kind of being able to say back to our organization and show that to the organization and the leadership team, this is the level of connection. And people would tell stories like, I learned about like the recycled backing and the kind of closed loop system we're trying to do with materials. And then I went back to my parents' farm and I told them, you guys are doing this all wrong. It needs to be a system. It needs to be a closed loop. Or these great stories of these guys in all of our factories around the world who took that zero waste mission to heart. And anytime we throw something away that they saw had value, they would find a way to repurpose it in their community. People's chicken runs, fences around their barbecues. Like, the stories are unbelievable. And all those little threads add up to such a rich web of changing how we think about stuff. Yeah. That is the part that we kind of don't talk about enough and we don't always measure.
Yeah, I love it. It's so beautiful. And I think that the insight that you had, the brilliance of taking a crew in and doing that kind of filming and interviewing and conversations. I just want to clarify for our audience too, like that was separate from Nathan coming in and creating Beyond Zero as its own documentary, which was an independently funded project.
Yes, separate. I should say that. We did that ourselves, and you can still find some of the videos on YouTube. It's just called I Am Mission Zero, which is what Interface kind of called their sustainability mission to get to zero impact. And you can see employees from our Australian factory, Thailand, the US, really great videos. And that was kind of something we did ourselves. And I would say every organization who's on this journey should do it because they won't necessarily have the opportunity that we had through Nathan, which was an independent filmmaker coming to us saying, I actually don't want any money. I want like to show people this case study because it's such a great story of corporate transformation. And by the way, you won't have any editorial rights. So we, you know, it could have gone terribly wrong. But, you know, I think it's been such a great, I'm sure Interface is very happy with it. I'm happy with it because I think it goes so much beyond Interface and is such a great educational tool to show people the potential, the type of transformation, what's possible when a bunch of people get really motivated to make change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that like what a treasure gift that you were able to give Nathan to be like, I have all of this footage from when we did our internal filming. And so that could contribute. So just recognizing all of the ripples of those smart and thoughtful choices along the way, not only about the steps that you're taking towards sustainability and climate change, but also the documentation of it. Because if we do it on our own and we don't document it, then it makes it so much harder for that to have that ripple effect and be that example that we were talking about earlier, right? For people to go, oh, that's how it's done. Oh, let me follow that, and being able to shortcut and be able to collapse time. So then we're having to start over each time because everyone is sort of having to figure it out on their own in silos. But when we, what's the word I'm looking for? When we dedicate ourselves to not only the process, but documenting the process and being willing to share that process, I think that vulnerability about sharing that process too is where real beautiful magic can happen as we're creating this kind of shift. And that's the heart warm fuzzy parts, right? As opposed to the hard numbers and all of the
you need both, right? I mean, in this you need both. And I think Interface was such a great, they did so many things right even before I got there. You know, they started measuring on every level all these environmental metrics in like the early 90s at the very inception of the program. Like they knew how many pounds of waste were going out. But, you know, paired with that, you had a founder who was able to sort of stand up with a lot of humility and vulnerability and be like, man, I've been doing this wrong for like 25 years and I'm going to do something about it. We are going to take the bull by the horns and really figure out how to do this in a better way. and we're going to measure it, along the way. So things like disclosing one of the first sustainability reports, being very open about areas where, they could get down to the dollar amount of dollar figures saved that went back to the bottom line by not wasting so much, and then the anecdotal stories of, I used to have guys on the line be like, my job back in the old days was just to push out the dumpsters of stuff that we didn't use. And, I had this one guy in one of our California plants say like, it was like 16 dumpsters a day of stuff that was going out. And by the way, that stuff is stuff that we paid for to be made into products. So when we put a financial cost on that and started showing people, this is how much is in this dumpster, it was like a double whammy. It was an environmental impact and a financial impact when people are like, oh my gosh, we have to do something.
Yeah, it just becomes a no-brainer at that point. You have been so generous with your time. I've been so excited about the conversation that I have not kept us as tight as we intended. But, yeah. Do you have any advice for people as we wrap up who may want to engage and get involved with this kind of conversation and this work, who may not be able to join us here in Chicago for Thursday's event, but who really has been feeling drawn to the conversation and wanting to make a difference?
Yeah, I would say definitely, reach out, figure out what's going to happen and what will transpire after the showing. I think this obviously won't be the only showing also. So I think if you get on the Beyond Zero website, there's loads of information you can find there. Maybe you can potentially make a showing for those of you who can make it. I would say really try to go see it in a theater. It's a really fun experience to be in that community watching it, to hear from the filmmaker, or I would say connect with you guys and follow along to see kind of what happens next. And you don't have to worry about being too late to the party. You can always, get involved in the post-screening, what's next conversations and events.
Exactly. I'm going to drop again in the chat just a link to be able to join us on Thursday. But absolutely what Erin said, there are ways, it is not a one and done. There are plenty of ways to get involved. Thank you for being so generous with your time today, Erin. And we'll wrap up there. And we hope to see everyone at the Caron Center here in Chicago with us on Thursday.
Oh, thanks, Cassandra. Have a great week.